Hey everyone, I wanted to give you some of my thoughts after a few months with my OPXY. So I'm still learning my XY, and so here's another opinion video because I'm still developing my own workflow slash style. I still consider myself a beginner on this device, and I am far from feeling super comfortable with it. So I'm still learning, all these opinions may change, but I figured I might as well share some of them so I'm not just completely silent until the next deep dive. So I'm using firmware 1.0.29, and today I'm going to be talking about how I've been using my XY. I'm going to give you some thoughts on the XY's design and how you navigate it, some thoughts on its sequencer, some thoughts on its sampling and resampling abilities, as well as its sound modulation and layering abilities, a little bit about the arranger, then a bit about the mixer and saturator. One of my first thoughts is that it's really important to have a template. It's kind of annoying to load the template over and over, but if you have any interest in keeping your end of chain, especially the gain groups and stuff, if you have any interest in keeping that consistent, you're going to probably want to use a template. So it's kind of an annoying task, but here's what I've been doing. I made a template, so I will just duplicate that, and then usually I will rename it to whatever day it is. So first of all, the main kind of application for the XY so far for me has just been making small daily little sketches slash ideas that I usually delete, but just trying to create some patterns and seeing what I do and don't like about it, trying to really get familiar with the workflow and feel really comfortable with the XY. So that's probably the main application I have. I've also been working on some covers with it. So I did a cover of Intro by the XX, and I'm working on a cover of Silver by Jesu. I don't know how he pronounces it. I've also been making some original songs, including one song that I started on my OPZ and then eventually moved to the XY and recorded there. And finally, I've been jamming a lot with people. I've been playing a lot with a guitar player and a bass player. So I've been using my XY for more live situations than I've ever used my OPZ or OP1 for. As far as navigation and cohesiveness overall of the instrument, this is the deepest instrument that teenage engineering has made, and so as a result, there's so many choices that it's a bit slower. I've mentioned this before, but I think I have a pretty solid example here with the filter cutoff. It might seem hard to remember which parameter is the filter cutoff on the OPZ, but what you ultimately have to remember is that it's on page 1 of all of your audio tracks, and it's this third parameter. You also have to remember on the third page that if this parameter is set to 3, it affects the filter. So that seems like a lot, but that is nothing compared to what you have to keep in mind with the XY. Even though it has a screen, let's say that I want to change the filter of this instrument. So I have to remember to go to this page, turn on the filter. That's not that big of a deal, right? That's pretty simple. But I'm also going to have to go open up this menu, make sure that none of these are targeting filter 1, so you have to remember that filter 1 is the cutoff. You also need to make sure the LFO isn't affecting the filter. So there are just a few more layers. Oh, and there's this additional, if I go back here, there's an additional high-pass filter that isn't visualized on the modules themselves. So yes, there's a screen, and it will tell you where everything is, but you still have to remember, oh right, that extra high-pass filter is over in this Shift and Instrument button menu, or you have to remember that filter 1 is cutoff and filter 2 is resonance as you're looking through these modulation targets. So there's just a bit more that you need to keep in your mind, which isn't the end of the world, isn't that difficult, but just something that it's been in my mind a lot because I've been using this thing a lot. As far as sampling and resampling goes, there's a lot more space on the XY than there are on other TE instruments. And so I've been sampling a lot more full instruments in, I believe this is, yeah, this one I took a guitar and I just kept playing the 12th fret harmonic, then tuning it down a semitone, 12th fret harmonic, and so I have all of these, a full chromatic scale that's just guitar harmonics. So there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with this. And I just think that's really cool because, I mean, yes, you can do that on other instruments and stuff, but that's just not an engine that they've incorporated before, and I've really been enjoying using that. With that, it's pretty hard to keep your samples organized. So I recommend just putting presets directly on here or filling up folders with samples. If you sample directly in, it's going to save, let's just do this. Let's just, here, let's just sample this in. Oops. Let's just sample this in. Oh, we got to decrease that threshold. Sample, sample, sample. Sample, sample, sample. Right, and so this is going to be saved under 1 mar in the, actually, let's just use this one. This one's going to be saved if we pull up a sampler engine under users, then 1 mar. And this is pretty easy right here, but it's pretty common for me to have, you know, several pages of just like file after file, and it's very difficult to figure out, wait, what did I record on that project? Wait, what did I sample on that other project? And if you can't remember them, you can't rename it from here. So the whole thing is just a little bit tricky. And you can resample, but there's a huge caveat with that. I'll actually show you what I mean here. Let's resample this. Now, that probably sounds fine, but it's also being run through a lot of stuff. Not only is it being run through the effects, it's being run through the mixer, it's being run through the EQ. So it's running through this EQ, it's being applied to the saturator. So if I wanted to, I could just saturate the crap out of it. And I could just, you know, sample that. Let's pull up a sampler engine here. And I'm going to turn off the metronome. And so what I could do here is I could just pull this up. And I could make it so that the source is, yeah, there we go. It's just going to be the mixer. And I could just hold this down. And so now we have this played. But the problem is that where the fuck? But the problem is that because I already ran this through the whole end of the chain, it's going to sound really saturated and compressed now. Now, I could then just take this out of the mix, and it'll sound a little bit better. But it's still not quite the same. So that's just something that you really need to be aware of, and you can use that to your advantage and, you know, EQ and saturate sounds that you're about to resample, but I found it to just be a little bit too tricky to use in any meaningful way for my purposes. So I'm still using my XY a lot more like just a read-only sampler. One of my favorite things on the XY is how quickly you can link tracks. You could link tracks on the OPZ really quickly, but it only linked the tracks while you were actually playing the notes on that track. It didn't link the tracks as far as sequenced notes goes. So the XY, though, does link those sequenced notes. So what if we link these two? And what if we make this one really obvious by, like, I don't know. So that's kind of neat, and one thing I've also been doing is linking drum kits. So I've got 2 drum kits here. They both are drum kits I recorded at a practice space and just sampled there. And here's the other one. I processed this one through a lot more like stuff like Native Instruments plugins and stuff like that, so that's why the drums sound so much more clear. Or at least more compressed. So I'm going to link these, and now we're going to have a much bigger sound. So now I've gone back to our linked track, and I've removed the link between those 2 tracks. And I'm going to set up my keyboard here real quick. So I've unlinked those tracks just to make this more clear. I'm going to pull up my modulation menu, and I've set filter 1 being the aftertouch target and 50 as the amount. So that's the maximum. And what's going to happen is as I apply more pressure to the pad, it's going to change the filter cutoff. And mod wheel is CC1. And so let's make that, what could we make that? Let's make that, yeah, let's have that control the amount of the vibrato. Yeah, LFO3 seems like a good target for it. So that's where it already was. And I'm going to, let's actually make it negative 25. And so now if I enable tilt, which is sending CC1, and if I then link these tracks and change this one so that, let's just do similar things. Let's make it though, so on this one, let's have LFO3 be the mod wheel target and the aftertouch target. Wait, what if filter 1 is the mod wheel target and the aftertouch target is LFO3? So similar to the other one, but a little bit different. So let's hear what this sounds like. Oh, and let's make it so that this is poly. Let's do that again. Okay, not my best performance. We could, if we wanted to, also add in pitch bend, because you can assign that to a specific target, and then on a different menu, you can disable pitch bend completely, which will mean that it doesn't affect the engine's pitch, but it still affects the modulation. So let's listen back to that, and it's going to have recorded all of that modulation. We can see that in this bar menu with all those crazy squiggles. And it records it at a much higher resolution than it records notes or parameter locks or automation. And the wild thing, just to bring up a brief OPZ comparison, is that they've really made it so that, for instance, the tape track can do a lot more. I'm going to switch to my tape track. I'm going to make it so it's only receiving audio from those pads, which I believe were 4 and 5. So I'm going to turn off all the rest of it. And let's just test that. Yep, that sounds right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to then, let's just make it so that the mix is about 50%. And I'm going to decrease this by an octave, and let's, I mean, this might sound kind of goofy, but let's, actually, wait, let's go. So I think that this is going to be, okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to be playing the different quarter notes, and I'm going to add an arpeggiator on this. And let's just see what happens here. on top of that, I could also use some of the kind of unique to XY things, like putting an LFO on the tape track, and I could have a fairly slow LFO kind of affecting the playback rate, kind of making it a little bit slower in a nuanced way. And so that would be, is that, nope, that's the second parameter, okay. As far as arranging on the XY goes, it's a bit tricky. It incorporates some logic from the OPZ, some logic from the KO2, but it's completely distinct from either of them, and I'm still wrapping my head around this, so I don't have a ton to say. The main thing I can say is that scenes can be up to 64 bars long, and so song mode here, having 32 of those, I think gives you plenty of space. I understand why people might not agree with that, but as far as I'm concerned, the fact that you can mute tracks per scene instead of per pattern makes it so that there's just a lot that you can do with this. So let's actually, for fun, what happens if we mute this? So here's what we'll do. This first scene, let's have it just be that first drum track and then this synth track here. Okay, so let's go to scene 2. And for this one, let's, why don't we mute that and unmute that. And then for scene 3, we will have both the drums and everything else. Cool. So I'm just going to arrange us, arrange us 1, 2, 3. And let's see what happens here. Let's just decrease this an octave. There we go. So sometimes, like right there, the arranger and song mode feel real, like fast and real simple, and then other times I just make a complete mess of my projects and get confused. So I'm definitely still learning it, and I don't even know like the mistakes I'm making yet. The last thing I want to talk about is the end of chain on the OP-XY, and I talked about this a little bit when I was mentioning resampling, but the XY has a lot of options here past the mixer. So we have an EQ, and let's just play with that a bit. Let's try to boost what we don't want. Those high frequencies sound a bit high, so I'm going to decrease them a bit. Do I want more mids? No, I don't. Do I want less? Well, that's kind of nice. Okay, so now that I've got it EQ'd, I can go here and saturate it. I'm going to start with gain and clip all the way off, tone in the middle. So I've been really stuck on these videos because there's kind of like too much to say to really keep them simple. So it would be really helpful if you let me know if this one was interesting or useful at all, because I don't know, I've just been having some weird kind of like writer's block with all this. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time.